Texas A&M gets rid of Jimbo Fisher on a Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Central Time. I know it was a big topic for you guys yesterday on your Sirius XM show. Are you surprised it happened now at this point into the season and that it's happening at all?
No, I'm not surprised. In fact, I thought Ross Bjork's comments were accurate and spot on. It's a program that's stuck in neutral right now. And I think the timing of this has more to do with the fact that they didn't want this Texas A&M team to go into the LSU game and somehow win the game. And now all of a sudden it becomes more difficult to make this decision. And you're in the same spot you were in last year saying, oh, okay, there's a little hope here. Maybe the trajectory is going in the right direction. Listen, this is one of those scenarios where the bottom line is this is a football team that does not play to the level of its talent. They do not know how to close out or win games. And when I say to the level of its talent doesn't equate to its production. And that is a direct reflection of coaching and development, unfortunately, in this business. So the money is what it is. Texas A&M can more than afford to do this if they choose to do so. And now you've got to account for $76 million on top of whatever the contract's going to be of who you go after next. So really not surprising. I said on our show yesterday, as you mentioned, you were listening, this is a program with just about every available resource known to man. They want for nothing. Tremendous fan base, an unbelievable university endowment, maybe the best in the country. The facilities are second to none. You have recruiting prowess. You have all of this. Yet they have 2 10-win seasons in the last 25 years. 2.
Yep.
That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable. This is not an 8-win program given the level of their resources. It's just not. And that's why we're sitting here today where we're at.
Well, my grandmother Nanny used to tell me money can't buy you happiness, son, and they're going to try to do it. 19 for those that are asking in the chat room, $19.2 million will be deposited into, I assume a direct deposit, into Jimbo Fisher's checking account within 60 days. Then he gets $7.2 million a year until through 2031, totaling around $76 million. Now, Ross Bjork was hinting that maybe it will not be that big a number yesterday, that there's some wording in the contract they're going to work through. And Bjork said there was robust discussion on Thursday night, but it was ultimately his decision. It was ironic that the 12th Man Foundation did present that check to the school at halftime of a game that Texas A&M won against Mississippi State. The 12th Man Foundation is the boosters, and they presented a check of $160 million to Bjork at halftime. So they were like, here, we've got the money. Here's a big check. 3 candidates seem to be the biggest. I want to start at the bottom with Dan Lanning first, because the 37-year-old who's very popular around these parts, a lot of fans here want him to be the next guy to follow Nick Saban. He had a little time briefly in Tuscaloosa, then went with Kirby Smart at Georgia, so he's a great recruiter, knows the SEC. But Oregon just gave him a new contract that, if I am correct, includes a $20 million buyout. I can't really pay a guy $76 million and then go buy out another guy for $20 million and then pay this guy whatever he's going to make, right? Or can I if I'm Texas A&M?
Of course you can if you want to. It's not a matter of if. I mean, the bottom line is, you've got to go out and identify who you think is the right guy, and then weigh those factors after the fact. Listen, I feel really strongly about this, and I understand it's Texas A&M, and I understand that there are a lot of folks, particularly tied close to that program, that feel like this is an elite level program that would draw an elite level coach that would send a signal and that would be flashy and all of those sorts of things. Well, the way I look at that is this decision needs to be far more about substance than it does about flash. If I was involved in this process, one of the questions I would be asking is, who's out there that has built and sustained a high-level, championship-level program? Who's out there that's done that with little to no resources or marginal resources? Who's been able to develop players? And I think that's a really, really critical component to all of this because, and I want to be careful with my words here, but one of the issues I think plagues Texas A&M, Jim, is while they have a bunch of great athletes and a bunch of great players, I think you can legitimately ask the question, what are the players' motivations in today's world of name, image, and likeness in transfer portal? Is it to win a championship? Is it to be the best possible player you can be for Texas A&M, to do everything you can to win the SEC and get to a college football playoff? Or is it just to make money? Is it just to earn money on name, image, and likeness and your name coming out of high school as being a high-level recruit? And I have a sneaky suspicion that that's a little bit of part of the problem there is where's the motivation and the loyalty and the dedication to being excellent, to being a champion. And I think they need to bring a guy in from a player development standpoint that makes that priority number one. And if guys don't like it and guys feel like, oh, well, I'm not getting mine. All right, well, that's what the transfer portal's for. And a coach is going to be staunch enough to stand on those principles and say, there's the door, but this is how we're going to do it around here. And I think that's got to be a big component to those decision makers as well.
Tesla Talk says, where's the motivation for the coach? If you got a $76 million guarantee buyout, what motivates you to get up and go to work every day?
Right.
Yeah, great point there. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the next 60 days, Jim, I mean, how's Jimbo Fisher going to put food on his table?
Yeah, I know. I mean, he's got to take what he saved, I hope. Yeah.
I hope he saved well. I mean, really.
Got to dip in there. Landmine Believer says, take landing out of your mouth. He's waiting on Alabama. And then there are others who are asking about A&M, and it's just an A&M problem. NH3425 says, Elko's been there. He'd be the first call for me. Lanning has no reason to leave Oregon now that they got into the Big Ten, which is a great point by him. Mike Elko's another name that's on this list, and he was a defensive coordinator there for a while, including that 2020 season. They got Jimbo Fisher even more money back then. He's 46 years old. He's gotten Duke to back-to-back bowl games. Tough loss this past weekend to North Carolina. The other guy that's being mentioned is Jeff Traylor, who I saw a couple of folks, including my friend Bruce Feldman and then Adam Rittenberg at ESPN, both describe him as maybe the best cultural fit for Texas A&M on the board because of his roots in high school and being from East Texas. He's 55, and he's done a wonderful job with UTSA. Tell me about those two guys in your opinion.
So I think Mike Elko obviously understands the landscape there, the infrastructure there. Having spent time at Texas A&M, done a wonderful job at Duke. In fact, you mentioned that North Carolina game this weekend. They took North Carolina double overtime on the road with a third-string freshman quarterback. Things have not gone well for them from an injury standpoint as it relates to Riley Leonard at Duke, and the schedule is much more difficult. They're still a really good football team. So do I think he's in play? Yeah, I probably think he would be in play. But the third guy you mentioned is the guy that fits the criteria of substance, in my opinion, that I was referencing that I think is so important in this job hunt. He's a self-made man, started at the lowest levels, championship level high school coach. Everybody in the state loves him. You won't talk to somebody at the high school level that doesn't love Jeff Traylor. He spent time in the SEC as an assistant coach, so he understands the challenges. He understands that landscape and the components that go in to building a program and what it takes to compete against the likes of an LSU or an Alabama or an Auburn or a Georgia. And I think that, listen, the one thing, and you said somebody in the chat room there mentioned there being an A&M problem. And I think there's validity to that because there's been very little consistency and tie-in from the top down at this university. They've had multiple presidents over the last 20 years. They've had multiple athletic directors, all right? The mad rush that they've made over the last 10 years in catching up in facilities upgrades, trying to put forth a championship level approach. That was probably 15 years later than most people were already entrenched in doing it. So now that they're there and those pieces of the puzzle are in place, It's probably the best time for new blood to come in there. And I think Jeff Traylor would be an ideal selection. I mean, I really do. I love those guys that have had to do it on their own. They've had to build it up. They've had to make that leap from the high school to the collegiate level and go from being a head coach to maybe an analyst, then to a position coach, then back to maybe a coordinator, then you become a head coach again, and then you build a program that was a fledgling program, when he took it over. So I love that call. Another one I was talking about yesterday that I think you got to look at is Lance Leipold. Do I think he would take it? I don't know if that's who he is. I don't know if that's the type of job that attracts him, but he fits a lot of that criteria I was mentioning. All he does is build and sustain excellence and win football games. That's it. And he's done it at places that is not easy to do it at, as we obviously know.